Okay, Parvathy.
Hello, Sundarji.
Yeah. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon to you too.
I am recording this talk because it is one of the several fundamental creative or original contributions of ideas or perspectives I am making to the world of psychology.
Okay.
If I were in the US, if I were in Harvard University, I would have already known many other professors who would work in this field, and they would have known me also, and I would have been made well renowned. Of course, I don't care that, but this perspective to be known and accepted by psychologists is very critical, very advantageous for them. Now, ERBARD. So there is an S also at the end, lowercase s. That means most of them are plurals only. So in that ERBARD, the first E stands for expression, rather expressions.
Okay.
Second letter R stands for responses.
Okay.
And the third letter B stands for behaviors. And next letter again, A, stands for actions or activities. And then the next letter R stands for relationships.
Okay.
And the last letter D stands for dialogues or language. So my theory is that human entity has only these 5 components. Let's say the structure of the human entity. Sigmund Freud talked about the structure of the consciousness. That is, the consciousness, the preconscious, the subconscious, and the non-conscious or unconscious. He also talked about the structure of the, I don't remember the structure of what, but that is something again fundamental. They were called id, id, ego and superego. Ego and superego. Anyway, so I think that is the structure of personality according to Freud, I don't know. Anyway, I am proposing structure of the very human entity in its totality.
Okay.
That is, a human entity has these 5 components or 5 spokes of expressions in the rolling of the wheel of that entity in existence. So, nothing more than that. So, all the possible, probable range of human whatever, human expressions can be listed under one or more of this. That is, expressions, responses, behaviors, actions, relationships and dialogues. That is my main heading. So we can make it little elaborate here and there, like expressions or ways of expressions, responses or ways of responses. Why the term ways come there is because your ways of expressions will be different from the ways of expressions of the same kind of some other individual. For example, your expression of sadness. Okay, let somebody asks you, why do you look sad, or why do you look out of mood, or why do you look depressed, or why do you look whatever, or oh, you look happy today also. Okay, so somebody else's happiness will be expressed in a different way, very face itself. So before we go into that, how I developed these 5 ideas about these 5 components is by my observation of my own so-called children. I use the word so-called because that's a common word, children. I don't look at them as children. I look at them as human entities happen to be born in my environment and lived in my environment. So, observing the behaviors of Mantra Rishika, the girl, and Amaya Rajarishi, the boy, basically. So, of course, and that too, they were born at a very mature age of me, at age of something like 48 plus, and then after mastering all the Upanishads and Vedas and the creativity research for decades only, they were born to me. So I could clearly observe them. And of course, if you remember, you are also a mother, if you remember, there was an expression on the face of the very infant itself. Don't you remember? Yeah. The very infant. I have observed, of course, at least 2, 3 or 4 infants at the same time, because I am a researcher. My intent to be in the hospital was to as a researcher only. So as soon as Amaya was brought in, of course, I observed his unique expression on the face. Then there was another 2 ladies also delivered the children, and as they came by, of course, I looked a very old person, so I looked at them, and the mother, or I don't know, remember, mother or nurse or some grandmother or somebody of another 2 little babies also I observed. And I even touched the cheeks of the child. And my touching on the cheeks, even that created a response, a change in expression. Anyway, and I did it so with so expressions. Then after about 2 years, then Mantra was born. So of course, a female child, expression was there, obviously. Then we go to some houses also, there are little children, but I don't remember whether I have seen other infants in some other homes, of course not. But little babies are there in most of the homes at that time. So there's a clear expression on the face of the child, let us say, starting with the very infant, individually different expression. That's why even a young mother can identify her infant. When the infant baby comes out of the womb, theoretically the nurse or the doctor has to show the baby to the mother. And the mother, whatever be her body conditions at that time, she would definitely open her eyes and see the wonder before her. It is like open her eyes and see the God before thee. That would be, any mother would open her eyes. Then only she will fall maybe to partly unconscious or partly tired state of sleep and all that. Anyway, there are even films showing that when the infants were exchanged, the mother went on saying that this is not my child, this is not my child, something like that. There was a recent film also. That means it is based on some research that are available. Anyway, I am sure mother, it is a fact that every infant has a unique expression. And it continues very much elaborate and detailed for about 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months. And by about the second or third day, when I touched the cheek of Amaya, he really smiled at me. Not at me, smiled. Because touching the cheek, that reflex response, I suppose. It is a reflex action. The infant really smiles. Yeah. Only on the cheek, especially slightly above the lip line. Immediately it smiles. And of course, if you touch the lips, immediately it will show the sucking reflex also. That's a reflex action explained by Sigmund Freud also. The libidinal energy is stored in the lips. As a battery, it starts the lips so that anything touches the lips, it will have that sucking reflex. That's a survival reflex. If it is not there, nobody can train a child to suck the nipples. So that is provided. So I also tested that. Immediately it raises the head, kind of an action is there. Even that there is a difference, in fact. The way Amaya's lips worked, of course, that is muscular system also is different. But at that time there was no video, or I did not have a phone and all that, therefore I could not record them. But the way Amaya responded when there is a touch and Mantra responded, that also was, expressed was different. I changed the word response to express, okay. It was a response also.
Yeah.
So, second is response.
Expression
Expression is the general appearance of the face. which conveys an impression in the mind of the observer. Okay. There are now major movements. What was your point?
I was asking, expressions are also responses.
Yeah, beautiful. So, Parvathy, you said expressions are also responses, of course. The human infant is developing much faster in the first 48 days, and then, of course, it continues faster. Uh, I don't remember exactly. The development of the brain is very fast in the first 1 or 2, 3 months, first 2, 3 hours especially. The eyes of a newborn infant is blindfolded for about 48 hours. It will never be able to see. Yeah, because most of those engines are getting started in that first 72 or whatever number of hours. Anyway, so there is a response, as you said, when the lip is touched. It's a reflex, but it's a reflection. We cannot say it's a response. But an adult showing that sucking reaction, like in smoking a cigarette or like doing a kiss, it is a response. In the case of an infant showing sucking, it is actually not a response. Because response involves a certain element of the rudimentary beginnings of the so-called mind or self. For example, within another 3, 4, 5 weeks, even I did not I had a record, but now I am talking from memory, and our number is not that important. The child has a certain response, in the sense that the hands go up, the face turns left and right, and there's a so-called cooing sound, and etc. When the mother body is, when the mother brings her face closer to the child and makes some noise, that is not expression. That is, as you said, is a response. Yeah. Because there are little more, in other words, responses. A response involves an assembly of expressions also, plus actual movements, body movements, limb movements, head movements. Okay. And if you remember, by the time 7 or 8, 9 months, the entire child body of the child responds when the mother comes out. Lying upside down, the body almost kind of jumps out of its bed to come to the mother. So there's a response, and that response is obviously different from some other person going to it, or some other person. Or if you move a kind of a very colorful toy above the head and all that, you can see many more response patterns on the face, on the hands, and the legs of the child.
Okay, that's why you said about that incident where touching the cheeks started inviting a response later on. First, when you touched the very first time, it was an expression.
Yeah.
But when you started touching exactly at the same point, it started eliciting a response.
Yes, correct. And all this behavioral range of behavioral repertoire, or the possibility of a human being, of a given human being, are triggered by the interaction with the environment, but also triggered in the early 4 years of developmental times. But the start is with expression. Immediately within about 1 or 2, 3 weeks or months, there will be responses, okay? Specific responses. A certain response to the mother, a certain response to the father, a certain response to another little sibling coming nearby, or a toy or a sounding toy or whatever it is. So, of course, as you said, it all becomes very elaborate as the entity becomes adult, of course. That will come little. First we are talking about...
Pure expression is not possible beyond an infant stage.
Pardon me?
A pure expression is not possible beyond an infant stage, because afterwards there is an involvement of mind. It's a
That's
response.
a much higher order point which you are talking. That we will, you can, of course, you can ask the question. It's a beautiful point. That so-called pure expression, okay, uninterrupted or unconnected with or disconnected with the so-called self and the mental contents, is possible only at that infant level. Yeah. And in fact, the Buddha, so-called expression of the Buddha is supposed to be of that level. Or when the expression of a so-called person, enlightened human being, or a human being who gets absolutely detached from the intricate influences of the so-called mind, then whatever expressions he or she may do are more or less compatible to that. It is very original. For example, the Buddha's smile is supposed to be, there's a lot of writings about the smile on the face of the Buddha also. So it is definitely not at all contaminated by the contents of the mind. It is not a result of his perception of people around or somebody else's appreciation, etc., etc. Yes. Pure expression. Of course, that's a beautiful point. Yeah. Sometimes an individual may chance to make such expressions, like when he or she sees a brilliant film or, or a wonderful piece of music or a wonderful sight of the nature process or a wonderful dance performance or a piece of painting and so on and so forth. Uh, uh, I think a great majority of individuals may uh, unknowingly have expressions unaffected by the normal influences of the mind or self. Okay, that also is there. But if there are one or two people around, perhaps those expressions could be a little bit influenced by their presence. Or when you read a wonderful article, when you read great perspectives, and when you have an insight, when you see something by your own reflection, as for example, when you read the Upanishads or the Gita or certain parts of the Bible or Quran or some great philosophies of the East or the West, uh, you may have that kind of an expression possible. And that's why you should be reading great things, that's why you should be listening to great music, that's why you should be observing great performances, that's why you should be interacting with the nature process and the wonders. Because the creature would start expressing. And you will become more tuned with the creature than with the self. That's why when individuals become depressed or sad or experiencing conflict or anxieties and worries, etc., etc., they do yoga asanas, they would sit in yoga asana, or they would sit and do so-called meditative practices. eh? And if it is real meditation or real pranayama or real yoga asana position, then their mind comes down from whatever expressions which otherwise it would have been driving. Because by that positioning of the body into various asanas, or by the power of their attention and the meditation and the object of meditation, the system, the entity goes back to its possible, probable, original configuration. Because ideal meditation is not on anything of self-content. I mean, content of the self, or emotions, or other pictures and images and myths and stories. Or let us say clear pranayama. That is attention focused on the basic process of the creature, of intake of prana and release of other materials. So when absolute focus on the pranayama or the movement of the prana happens, that is much more conducive to reach the potential state of a pure infant than most of the idea-based or image-based meditations. There also it is possible. when you become the deity, or when your attention becomes compatible, or you get yogified with the image of the deity, then also your expression becomes pure, or rather your entity becomes close to the creature level or the infant level. Or when you enjoy good music, you forget everything. So you become the music. That is a little bit of closer to that pure expression, as you said. So when you enjoy good music, you're happy. You don't laugh, but you may not even smile, but you enjoy. Like a child, little baby enjoys the feel of the mother's breast or hands. Real art should take you to that level. Or real reading of great literature, great poetry, great fiction, not fiction, but not great poetry, and great perspectives of spiritual upper, higher order orbits of human thoughts. Okay? That is actually by what do you do in sitting in yogasana kind of meditative posture or pranayamic posture? Pranayama should be done in a certain asana position only. So asana meaning, as we discussed before, putting the creature into a certain structure which will eliminate the irregularities of the movements of the vayus and the rasas or the liquids, especially the liquids and the vayus. And then you do the pranayama. What happens is, of course, there are no open dialogues, but internal dialogues will continue. There is, you are not relating with anyone, you are not doing any other actions. You see, dialogues are reduced, relationship is cut down, and your any activity is cut down. Then comes your behavior. Of course, you are simply sitting, and then your response also is minimized. Then you are simply sitting in an expression. You become an embodiment of expression. Or in the bhakti yoga or in the normal meditation before a deity, you become an embodiment of your images of the deity. Like a little baby feels maybe enlightened by the presence of the mother. Okay? Got it? Is it clear?
Yeah.